The world needs more bravery.
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 Bravery is refusing to get together with my friends and family that I love.
Bravery is living in constant fear.
Bravery is going into a fight or flight response when someone sneezes.
I am brave.
I am brave.
I am brave.
I'm brave enough to live in never-ending terror of a virus.
I'm brave enough to know that politicians know what's best for me.
I'm brave enough to follow orders.
I'm brave enough to not reopen my business.
I'm brave enough to protect my family from income.
Instead of working, I'm brave enough to protect my family by letting them starve.
I'm brave enough to know that self-induced poverty is in everyone's best interest.
I'm brave enough to do as I'm told without questioning it.
I'm brave enough to get my personal worldview from the media.
I'm brave enough to dismiss all ideas that the fact checkers say are false.
I'm brave enough to live in constant fear about what could happen to me.
I'm brave enough to feel ashamed if I'm not wearing a mask in public.
I'm brave enough to scream at people who are not as scared as I am.
I'm brave enough to want to be tracked so I can be safe.
I'm brave enough to know that I'm too weak to survive unless I get a mandatory injection.
I'm brave enough to teach my kids to boldly fear human connection.
I'm brave enough to keep my child from going to a school that doesn't require children to cover their faces all day.
I'm brave enough to show my kids how to be obedient to all authority figures.
I'm brave enough to know I'm helpless without someone telling me what I'm allowed to do.
I'm brave enough to know that what they tell me to think is what I think.
I'm brave enough to resist the temptation to think for myself.
I'm brave enough to obey for everyone's safety.
I'm brave enough to know that I need the government to protect me at all times.
I'm brave enough to know that when my gut tells me I'm being fooled, I'm wrong.
I'm brave enough to know that the depths of despair, poverty, and starvation are just the price we pay for being brave.
Be brave.
Be brave.
Be brave.
Together, we can reimagine a braver tomorrow.
From Dallas, Texas, this is Anarchast.
Greetings, brave people. Welcome back to Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet. Today, I am pleased to bring you Shepard the Voluntaryist. He is an entrepreneur, father, husband, radio host, video creator, and ex-SWAT team sniper. Welcome to the show, Shepard.
Thank you, Patrick. Thanks for having me on.
Man, I love talking to you. I was lucky enough to be on your show recently, and we had great talks. Every single time I talk to you, I'm inspired. I walk away from it more excited, wise, and driven to create more content in a higher quality than I was doing previously. So I'm looking forward to this conversation because I recently found out, and I think you told me this a long time ago, and I guess I forgot, but I recently was reminded by you that you used to be a cop. And I have And I have been trying for years, and this is not an exaggeration. I've been reaching out to cops for at least 5 years on my other channel to try and interview one, to talk through sort of the ethics and procedures and authority behind the badge. And so I am, man, this conversation has been a long time coming for me, and I hope you're ready to get grilled.
Oh, perfect. That's just perfect.
So I guess I need to start by asking you, and I think this is going to be sort of the theme for the whole show, is sort of talking through this and letting people get to know you. But how did you become an anarchist? Let's dive in and pick you apart.
Well, perfect. I was never really into politics that much. I was introduced to Atlas Shrugged in my early 20s, and so I kind of flirted around with the idea of objectivism. And then in 2007, a guy happened upon me in my little town and saw that I was interested in objectivism, meetup groups, and he said, "Hey, there's this guy, Ron Paul, running for office, and he's kind of like that. Have you heard of him?" And I said, "No." And then I got involved with him in the Ron Paul movement in my state. I was a state delegate and became the treasurer of my local Republican Party and tried to play within the system. And as you might recall, he was not elected. And there was a lot of dirtiness and nastiness that went on. And I got a little bit disillusioned. And then through this same guy, he sends me the video of Tom Woods and Doug Casey having their debate on, is limited government an oxymoron? And that just kind of made me think. And then I was looking into logic, and I found the YouTuber formerly known as an anarchist, actually the former YouTuber formerly known as an anarchist, and I found him
shots
for a
fired.
logic thing. Yeah. And you have no idea what it's like to be deplatformed, Patrick. You have no idea. Anyway, no. I got into some of his work, and I listened to hundreds, thousands of hours of various things, and shortly thereafter realized that voluntarism was the way I wanted to go. And I hadn't been a cop I was out for maybe 3 years at that point, and I don't know if I had still been a cop at the time, if my paycheck was depending on it. I don't know that I would have had the guts to step away. I don't know. I probably wouldn't have. I don't even think I would have opened my mind enough to listen. I don't think I would have had that intellect or openness at that point.
Can we maybe examine why that might have been? Because is there something we can learn from it on how to reach people that are currently in that state of mind? Or is the lesson just to not try as hard until you find people that are ready for it?
I think the latter is the truth, unfortunately. We as voluntarists, we have about 7 billion people that we can market our ideas to. And if we start taking out the ones that we don't have a way to communicate with because of language difficulties, we take out the ones that aren't all that bright, and we start narrowing it down. There are still so many people out there that, talking to people who basically, in order to come on board, they have to give up their income. They have to give up their jet skis, their house, get divorced, have their wives and husbands sue them for their children because of some philosophy idea that wouldn't work anyway. I sure wouldn't market to a cop. That's not the low-hanging fruit that I would go after.
Interesting. I think we're going to learn a lot. And guys, we're open to questions too. If you want to ask a question, type question in all caps followed by your question so you can make sure I see it. And get it in. So what, there's so many ways to go with this. Back when Black Lives Matter was first coming out, I did a video because I was down in Austin, Texas. I was filming a video at the Capitol building about how these rising tensions between the police and the people was sort of was a self-reinforcing cycle. It was a feedback loop that didn't really have a release valve because humans have this tendency to tribe up and to take collective wrongs of whatever tribe they're in upon themselves personally, and I'm talking about both sides. At the time I was talking about BLM and I was talking about police. If a cop gets murdered, all the cops now, at least a little bit, and please correct me if I'm wrong, all the cops start othering the people, the normies, the plebs, the citizenry. They see themselves as a different group. They get othered, and then the same thing happens the other direction when the people get abused by cops or murdered by cops. Then they treat the cops worse. And what happens is because both sides have this tribalistic escalation, they start hating each other more, which causes them to treat each other worse, which causes them to hate each other more, which causes them to treat each other worse. And one side militarizes and the other side sees the militarization as an outright threat to their safety. Is there any way to break that cycle? What do you think about that? Is that accurate?
I think it's accurate. However, I have less emphasis on cops thinking. I don't think that cops think about it as deeply as those of us that have philosophy as our way of life or our hobby do. It just doesn't even enter. It doesn't even enter into it. A friend of mine, a voluntarist, was suggesting that maybe nonviolent communication would be a good way to talk to a cop. If you're pulled over, you think about what's the cop thinking, what's he's feeling right now, and how can I reach him and satisfy his needs and make him feel heard. Well, a cop doesn't want to be heard. It doesn't have feelings. You're just doing your job. It's not a big deal. You pull over 15, 20 people a day, and it's not a big emotional thing like it is for some people. For a person getting pulled over, it's a big deal. But for a cop, you're not feeling any emotion. You have to pull them over. Because a ticket a day keeps the sergeant away, and I never had a quota, but you have to go out and show you're being busy. And I would usually warn people, but I didn't really I wasn't feeling anything at the time. I was just doing my job, and that of course alleviates a person of all responsibility.
We have something great in the comments and something bad in the comments, and I'm going to address both really quickly. The after party says, "Hey gang, so happy to see Shepard. I had the pleasure of sitting next to him at Larkin Rose's Candles in the Dark class in Mexico. I think the first time I met Shepard as well was in Acapulco in Mexico."
Yes.
So you have some fans in the audience, the people that know you. That's awesome.
Perfect. Hello, you.
We also have somebody that says, "Worthless sacks of crap like this guy are why our republic is in danger." First of all, two things. Number one, he's a voluntarist now, and the reason why we're having him on the show is to talk through his story of how he went from being that guy to this guy. Number two, if you're going to insult guests on my show, you're not going to have the privilege of appearing on the screen anymore. So please keep it polite and respectful here.
I kind of find it sexy, but I feel there's a certain tension going on between us. But I get it too. Okay. I'm fine with that. That's all good.
I don't want to invite people on the show to be abused by the audience. Like you're here in good faith, okay. So you were no longer a cop when you sort of started going down the road towards voluntarism. Is that what you said? Okay.
Correct.
Yep. And you also think that you would not have been accepted in your brain if you were still a cop at the time? And
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I spent so much of my late teens, early 20s dreaming of becoming a cop. This is what I wanted to do from the time I was 17 or 18 years old until the time I was 21. This was my big dream. And part of it was honestly, truly that I wanted to help people. And then there was also this benefit. You get to drive really fast without getting in trouble for it. And you get to get in fights and chase people. Like, that's exciting stuff for young males. And I would say not just young human males, maybe the driving part, but I think a lot of young bucks want to go out and tangle it up and mix it up. And one of the benefits of doing this, if you're a cop, is there's no chance of losing. So if you were kind of a chubby kid that was teased some and bullied, and now you had this chance to be the man, and you're never going to lose fights. You've always got 10 other people showing up there, but everybody thinks, oh, you're so brave going out there and risking your life every day. I bought into all that 100%. And so I wouldn't say that I was all nice guy, but there was still a lot of nice guy in me. I genuinely wanted to be the guy that walked the streets carrying the big stick and making sure nobody was getting hurt, nobody was getting harmed. And for a while during my career, I was a crimes against children detective. And during that time, I think I probably did some good. But I would say that I've probably done much more good just doing things as a civilian, jump starting people, or when they get stuck in the snow ditch, I carry a tow strap and I yank them out. And it's not like I'm any less brave now than I was then. However, I do still love the Be Brave hashtag because of JP's wonderful introduction to your show.
Wasn't that hilarious? I'm probably getting a copyright strike for that, and it's going to be worth it.
Oh, absolutely. Have him on. He's awesome.
Is he a voluntarist? I mean, sometimes I wonder.
It's not. But he's close. Okay. Sasha Daygame, who is at Anarchapulco, did you meet him? They're actually pals. So there's a little bit of a connection there. Yeah.
Maybe we should hit him up. Okay, interesting.
Yeah,
So looking back on your time as a cop now, Somebody asked in the comments, Tyler asks, how many people did you put away for victimless crimes while you were a cop, I guess would be the question. And how do you process that now? And again, like I keep going back to like, is there really no way to reach cops to get through to them? I've never come to that conclusion before, but I'm worried that you're right. So,
and I don't know the number. However, I would say almost everyone that I caused harm to, whether it was through seizing them and putting them in a place, which if I didn't have a beautiful golden brooch on my costume, it would have been called kidnapping. If I hadn't done that, if I hadn't extorted, if I hadn't robbed, all the people that, no, not all the people, almost all of the people that I did that to, there was not a direct victim. Now, I am proud that I didn't write very many speeding tickets. I didn't arrest people for weed very much. There might have been a few times, but this just shows to Goya how unemotional I was about it. It's not like I went home at night and said, there were just these poor people trying to have a party and smoke some weed, and I went in there and wrote them a $110 ticket. Oh, how am I going to sleep tonight? Well, no, I was just doing my job. I think it's good to, this is going to sound bad, but I think it might be good to think of cops not so much as people, but as machines or as robots. That we were taught that there are certain things that you just, when you have your uniform on and you're out in public, you're professional. People shouldn't even know that you ever have to use the bathroom. You are just a strong, solid, and you're taught how to speak to people. You're taught how to, some might use the word manipulative, but only an honest person would use that word. You're taught how to talk to people, the 8-step tactical. Have you ever heard of this? It's a verbal judo thing.
I haven't. Educate me.
Yes. So we went through it, and I'm not going to remember them all, but there's this certain steps that you go through when you make a traffic stop. And this came out in the mid-90s, right as I was starting my career. But you first, and I think I'll get this order pretty close. First, you introduce yourself to the person. You identify yourself by name and then by your agency. And so I would say, good evening, sir. I'm Shepard with the Dallas Police Department. I noticed that you were traveling in excess of the speed limit by 8 miles an hour. Do you have any legal justification for this? So that would be the steps that you would go through. And I'm not sure, there was somewhere in there you asked for the identification. But the reason you do that is because you want to set the argument up in such a way, or not the argument, the encounter, that there can't be an argument. So I wouldn't say, do you feel that the reason I pulled you over is really right for me to do? Were you really harming anybody? Well, no, of course you're not going to ask it that way. You're going to load the question. So this 8-step tactical method, which I've clearly forgotten since then, it was a good way to manipulate people. Just as if you're a realtor and there's a beautiful view, you're going to stand with your back to it as you're showing the house so that the person looking at the house is able to look past you and see this beautiful view. It's just a way to communicate, a sophisticated way to sell, to communicate. And so when I would walk up to a car and say, hi, I'm Shepard with the Dallas, and I wasn't in Dallas, but I'm Shepard with the Dallas Police Department. It wasn't like I was being a human trying to really, truly communicate with you. I was a machine that the play button had been hit, and I was saying those words, and then I would hear the words back from you. And then depending on what you said, I would have a response that I would give back to you. And that's how we were trained to do it. So there wasn't any real emotion involved. And if you had tried to talk to me about the greater philosophical things behind some people stopping other people and taking their money because they were going faster than a politician who the cop and the other person hate, just because some politician said you can't go over this speed. No. That's not what we're here to talk about. What we're here to do is I'm telling you you're going too fast, and I'm going to You take control of the situation, use your command presence, and you bring it back into the matter at hand at the current time. That's how we were trained. Wow. Actually, I think I got that from Full Metal Jacket. Never mind. That was a different thing. But that was the general philosophy with which we were trained.
I mean, it's getting to be close to the same thing, military and police these days, the training and the steps that they take.
Yep.
So what would you recommend? Do you have any recommendations for voluntarists dealing with cops in these situations today?
Yes. Cut your hair. Don't have tattoos. And drive a nice car. Like, if you do those three things, and if it doesn't take too much effort, be white. If you can just do those four things, you will probably be okay. And I'm not even going to say, and I didn't really, and I kind of joke about that part because I found out a couple of years ago that I'm 1% black, so now I'm allowed to joke around. But when I was a cop, I wouldn't pull somebody over because of their color. However, that would have something to do with it. Why would a person of that color that is also driving an older four-door American-made car that also has a shaved head, that also quickly looks away from me and slips down in their seat and has tattoos on their neck, why is that person in my nice little town? Looks like maybe the tread on their tires is not quite as deep as the state statute requires it to be. And so all of these things come together to get a person pulled over. But if you're driving a car that's no more than 3 or 4 or 5 years old and it's clean and you have a conservative looking haircut and you don't have any tattoos showing and you don't have any of those bumper stickers promoting the marijuanas or anything like that, screw authority, any of that, just be a normal, good, obedient sheep or robot or whatever you want to call it, citizen. Just be a good, normal person, and you probably won't have to deal with the cops. Cops aren't out looking to have altercations. Those are a hassle. You want to just, at least for me and the people that I worked with, you honestly are looking for the people that are doing bad things to hurt others. There are a few that get into things like traffic enforcement or drug enforcement, but by and large, you go out in your car and you wait for somebody to have a problem that's too big for them to solve on their own, that they have to call, and then you have the gear and the training and the partners, and you all get to go and save the day. That's kind of the attitude that I think at least small town cops have. I would say 80 or 90% of cops generally think they're doing the right thing.
Yeah, well, that's for sure.
They're trying to just step right. Yeah.
And I think at least some percent of them go into it, at least in part, because they want to be the heroic good guy and they want to, serve their community, at least in part. Now, like you said earlier, and I think you were spot on, that a lot of it gives you the opportunity to get back at the bullies by being safe from any form of bullying, right? By joining sort of the largest gang in town. But yeah, I think it would be disingenuous to think that there aren't any cops that genuinely want to be the good guys. And if we can't at least agree on that point of empathy, not sympathy, empathy, then, we're never going to get anywhere with them. Yeah.
I've had one negative encounter with a cop in the last year, and that was he was under the impression that I was going 79 miles an hour in a 70 mile an hour zone. And my speedometer was also under that impression. And he pulled me over and came up, and I was very nice, cordial to him. And I could have pulled the old, hey, man, it's got to be cold out here. Remember when I was a cop, blah, blah, blah. And then, maybe gotten out of it. But I didn't even bring that up. And I got a ticket for going 9 over. And that sucked. And I don't like the guy. He's the only person that has person to person stolen, I think, a little over $100 from me in the last year. I've been fortunate when I go around to ATMs or any other place, alleys. Nobody else has stolen any money from me in the last year. And I've been in the most dangerous city in the world, or one of the top 5, Acapulco, Mexico, and nobody stole anything from me. But then here I am in my little Rocky Mountain tiny state, and a guy with a gun stole some money from me. So that's it's a negative thing, but I can't dwell on it that much because, okay, I got held up. The highwayman took some money from me, and now I'm going to move on and go and be a good, hard-charging entrepreneur and make way more than he's going to this year. Okay, take a little bite of the dog here and there, your mordida or whatever they call it in Mexico.
Okay, so we've gotten a few comments that have they have a common theme. They're like, I want to ask you some prompts to see what a cop would think about these things. The first one will be the phrase, "there are no good cops." And you know the voluntarist argument for that, right? So even and I can steel man the good cop, right? That a voluntarist would call a good cop, right? So let me steel man this, because I don't think a lot of voluntarists have even heard of such things. But in some states, they have volunteer police that get full certified, like in Texas, I think they're just called volunteer cops. They get the T-close certification, which is the Texas law enforcement certification here in Texas. So they are fully empowered as gang members of the Blue Line Gang. And then they only work, like 1 or 2 days a week for free. They'll patrol an area looking for bad guys, or they'll be paid out of private money for running security at events or things like that. So they're not taking any extortion money, and they're not really going out and accosting people for victimless crimes. So that is my best attempt at steel manning what a good cop, or at least a not bad cop, would look like. But my question to you is, what would a cop think to somebody who made sort of that voluntarist argument about there are no good cops?
Very offensive, because I'm a good cop. I'm doing the right thing, and I'm not stealing money. I'm not, I don't take money from people at traffic stops. All I do is say, hey, here's the fact that happens. Promise you'll go and talk to another government employee who's wearing a beautiful black dress and has a hammer. Go talk to that person about it if you don't like what's going on. I'm just doing a little administrative task. It's my job. I got to do it, man. You seem like a nice person. Sorry. But no, I'm a good guy. That's what the cop would say. Now, of course, my attitude now is that I was part of the Bill Clinton drug cops, get more drug cops on the street. So as a new cop, you don't start out as a drug guy. You start out on patrol. But I came on because of a federal grant, and I spent 10 years as a cop from the mid-90s to mid-2000s. And at that time, it cost about $100,000 a year to put a cop on the street, between the vehicle and the insurance and the benefits and salary and all that stuff. So I have essentially, this voluntarist perspective, it's not what cops think, but I have stolen or accepted and stolen money, $1 million from all the people that pay taxes, or I hate that word, taxes, that pay theft. Mm-hmm. I've accepted $1 million in stolen property. So now how do I, and I've struggled with this over the years, I can't, I don't have the money to go write a check and say, hey, sorry about that. Can I make this right? And most people's response has been, hey man, just quit it. Don't do it anymore. And we're good. Apologize and keep going. So I have apologized repeatedly, and I'll apologize right now to everyone out there that I pulled over, or anyone out there that has ever had to pay a dime in taxation. I am sorry I accepted it. I messed up. Shame on me. I have no excuse. And so that's the best apology that I can give as I go forward. But that would certainly not be the typical current working cops attitude. They don't realize that.
I just hope that everyone watching gives you the credit that you're due for making that apology. I mean, that's powerful. Those are powerful words. So I appreciate it. If I don't care if I'm the only one that appreciates it. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I don't think anybody's ever said that. I'm not sure a cop's ever said those words before in the history of the human species. So I think epic moments right here, folks.
So who knows? Maybe I'm an outlier. I wasn't a very good cop. Who knows, man? I might be the only one ever.
So okay, the next one would be like, what would what do the cops think? Well, it's kind of the same question, really. Like about all the. This is a dumb question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So, like, the people that say, like, ACOB, all cops are bastards, or FTP, fuck the police, or, the people that are, very I mean, obviously, and for a lot of good reasons, very anti-cop. What is the impression on the cop side of those types of people?
They just, they're just useless. Like those people are out there. It really hurts to be out here working hard, risking my life every day to keep people safe. And then you people don't even appreciate me, but that's okay. Do whatever you want to do, whatever. I'm not going to target you. Just stay out of here. I'm trying to do the right thing. And if you want to be a hater, but well, you know what, kind of the attitude of the person that was, trying to come on to me earlier, that you read the comment that you were saying was being rude, kind of the same attitude there. Like, I don't really care. You might have a good point. You could be right, but I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to do other stuff, and I'm going to keep on trucking. And I wouldn't target. I've never targeted anybody because they were anti-cop. So you didn't ask about targeting, but I think that's kind of what I would be worried about if I had been on the other side of it. But no, you don't really you get targeted. Now, I would say targeted in that you know that a person is a problem child. So you might be more likely to pull that person over if they're going 9 miles an hour, where usually your personal threshold might be 10 miles an hour or 11 miles an hour over the limit. You might do little things like that, but I've never followed somebody around or tried to bust somebody because they were a person that simply didn't appreciate that all that I was doing for our little town and Merc.
So I know you don't want to talk about what state you're in, but is it like, can you tell us, like, is it a state with like a major population, or is it kind of in the middle of the country? Or
We're tiny, Rocky Mountain area, very quiet. I got my first couple years of law enforcement started in Southern California. I was in a huge jail system. I worked in the jail for just a little under 2 years, and then was on the street for 6 months and didn't cut it. I was fired from my first patrol job at an agency. I was told that because of my Midwestern upbringing, I wasn't street smart enough to know what was going on, and it just wasn't going to work out. And I recall one of the issues was I thought that we were supposed to pull over Mexicans, but it turns out then I go, okay, so then I would pull over a Mexican. Actually, I'd pull over somebody that didn't have a license plate light. And the person would turn out to be a Mexican. And then my field training officer would say, why are you pulling this person over? And I'd say, well, wait a minute. I thought we were supposed to pull over this kind of person. And he'd say, no, this person's just a person fresh over the border. They're not even legal. They're trying to wash dishes and support their family. They're good people. Don't mess with them. People you're supposed to be pulling over are the inner city folk that drive some miles to get here to our quiet little beach town that is all rich and mostly white. You're supposed to pull those people over, the bad guys that come here to steal stuff, not the poor dishwashers. And so there were a lot of things like that I was, I don't know. And I think I've never been good working for others. But yeah, I wasn't a good cop. So I got canned from that and then spent a little under 8 years in the Rocky Mountain area in a tiny little town, 25 sworn cops, I think.
Interesting. Okay, well, let's move on. Now, we're still open for questions, so if anybody you have, this is your opportunity, guys. I know that a lot of you do not get opportunities to ask questions of ex-cops that are now voluntarists, and I want to sort of brag about what you've been doing. For the past year, I've been sharing your content, saying that I think you are the most undersubscribed, excuse me. You are the most undersubscribed voluntarist YouTube channel for the quality that you put out. You are uniquely skilled in making short messages that have a lot of meaning packed in a few minutes of video. And then I guess I would like to just point people to your content on YouTube, and then also talk about what you've been doing recently. You have a radio show, like on terrestrial radio, that you're doing. Can you kind of talk to us about what you've been doing and your style of presentation?
Yes. And actually, going back to what you were saying in the beginning, please do ask questions now and anytime. It can be offline. Get a hold of Patrick, get a hold of me, and just shoot questions. I've got nothing to hide. And please do be harsh if you want to. If you want a good answer, I'm happy to give you the best I've got. So, yeah, my recent activism, when I first became a voluntarist, for the first years, I was just kind of behind the scenes. Kind of my thing is just introducing two people together that I think will work well together. And then I walk away and look back in 3 years and they've created magic. So that's kind of been, I've just kind of accidentally put people together, and that's been my little thing. And then the last couple years, I've had a YouTube channel, Shepard Thinks, and I try to keep everything short on there, short and sweet. And yeah, after, looking at the quality of your show, I try to make everything look horrible and grainy and have horrible audio. That's something I'm able to do well. So I've been doing that for a couple years now, and frankly, though, there's so much good content out there. I mean, please watch and subscribe. But more importantly, if it's not your style, I am so excited these days that there are so many more people than there were 12 years ago when I first got into it. 12 years ago, you knew everybody that was a content producer. You knew them. And now I'm always going, wait, somebody else has a show? Oh, that's interesting. I was interviewed a year or so ago by Jared Norden, and he dubbed me the Mr. Rogers of voluntarism. And I've kind of come to embrace that. I think my greatest joy is sitting at the bar in Anarchapulco with 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 other hardcore intellectual. I'm not intellectual, but hardcore is what I'm saying. We're all sitting there with people who are way smarter than I am, have read way more, and just arguing and debating and having fun. That's what I love, is the meat of it. But I've kind of noticed that missing in voluntarism is the message that is kind and sweet, and the message that our aunt, who has never heard of anything like this and watches news, still watches news in this decade, is still watching news and doesn't think it's just entertainment. And people who watch sports ball, and there are all of these different types of people that just aren't into thinking and into philosophy. And I am trying to tone myself down. My wife is also a voluntarist, so I have to run things by Lynn and say, is this okay? And a week before last, she listens to it. She says, no, that can't go out. That's not Mr. Rogers. Okay, I'll soften it down. I'll tone it down. So I just think that there's a need for that in the movement. And there are plenty of people like the Disenthrall show, Larkin Rose, the heavy hitters. But there's not that much out there for the masses who are just saying, what's this thing? Volunteerism? Oh, no, it's actually voluntarism. And this is what some of the basics are. And it kind of is volunteerism. You make me think about that. That's a good point. And just kind of having nice, easygoing conversations with people, or producing content that is a little bit nicer. So, yeah, that's kind of what I'm interested in doing. And we'll see how it goes.
Well, we've had a few cool questions coming in here, so I want to get to those. But first, I want to just point out that, I think you have identified a very real and legitimate sort of hole in the market for media in anarchist content. And I love that you are hyper-focused on filling that, because I need a channel that I can link to all the normie friends, the people that aren't. You know what? Like when I set out, back in the day, it was my partner Ryan on the Disenthrall channel. I set out to create that channel to be the thing that wakes up the normies. It turns out I'm more philosophically nerdy minded, and it is not as much fun for me to tone it down like you're talking about. And so I seem to be good at grabbing the low hanging fruit that groups like the Libertarian Party bring down to my level, so that I can just pick the fruit and bring them the rest of the way. That seems to be what I'm good at. And So I'm going to keep doing that, but I'm sort of envious, in fact, in a way that you have this ability. You really do have an ability to break it down and present the message in a way that is non-offensive to the normies. So I would recommend that people do go check out your channel just to have that URL in their wallet so that they can hand it to people that is crafted for, because there aren't many people servicing the market niche. I don't know.
That's exactly right. And I was actually reminded that about 2 weeks ago, I mentioned to a friend who's a 99% there kind of guy. And he said a gal he knows is a proud communist. And I said, oh my gosh, it'd be awesome to have her on the show, on the radio show, just kind of learn what her worldviews are. And he says, well, yeah, and I'd like to give her a little heads up. What can you point me to? Just give her a real quick idea of voluntarism. And I thought, well, I know what I want to watch. I want to watch what is the Sacred Cow Shish Kebab by Larkin Rose from Acapulco a few years ago. That's what I want to go watch.
Shish Kebab. That's hilarious. Yes, that's
you
Larkin.
Remember his thing? Yep. Yeah, and just kind of no. F the police. F the military. F your holy sky rag. But I can't send this to somebody who is just kind of curious. Oh, what's this idea you have? And so in looking around, I couldn't find good content. And so I made a podcast, and I tried to put everything in the first 12 and a half minutes, which is how long each segment of my radio show is. And I tried to include it all in 12 and a half minutes, knowing that I wouldn't get it right. And by the way, that's something I love doing, is failing, because each time I fail, I learn from it. So I'm going to do another iteration or 2 or 3. And then my hope is that in enough time, there'll be enough little tidbits out there that are something that you could say, oh yeah, here's something you can listen to just kind of learn the fundamentals. And the person listens to it and goes, wow, those seem like really nice people. Well, we'll see how it goes.
They're asking in the comments, and this might be already linked in the description for you, but what's your YouTube channel so people can find it?
Shepard Thinks.
All right. I'm pretty sure we linked that in the description. If not, I'll get it there after the show.
So I could get up to 13 subscribers today, you think?
You better get up to 13 subscribers. Criminally undersubscribed, sir. Okay. Ex-Bootlicker says something in a way that I think we can massage into something that might actually be productive. He said, this guy actually believes that retaliation from police officers never happens. What a joke. A more productive way to phrase that would be, hey, Shepard, do you really believe that there's no retaliation from police officers?
I absolutely do not believe that. I think most cops don't do that, but there's absolutely retaliation. Yeah, yes. And I have even retaliated. I have had my people that I have picked on. It's not because of like our original comment was the person who's, screw the police. Sorry to use that kind of language, but the people who are out there saying screw the police, I'd never picked on anybody for that. But there was a guy who was, I recall he was not beating his girlfriend, but she was much younger and weaker, and he was really being a bad guy to her. And I picked on him for quite some months and was in his face. And he would get stopped on traffic stops, all for real violations. So I was legally okay, but I was absolutely targeting him and picking on him, as many cops do. But it's typically for people being bad guys that are genuinely out to hurt people. It's not always for the particular crime of contempt of cop. That's a real thing. Like you can get, if we have time and you feel like it, I'll tell you a 5-minute story about arresting a guy. A guy is running a stop sign. It's 1:00 in the morning. I'm out on this deserted street. He's the only other person within view, and I'm 200-300 yards away, driving 10 miles an hour, patrolling. This guy rolls up to the stop sign on his bicycle at 1 a.m. and just cruises right through the stop sign without stopping, and keeps going into this quiet residential neighborhood. And so I pull up beside him and I say, hey man, do me a favor, stop at the stop signs in the future, because I didn't want to give him a ticket or anything. He wasn't being a bad guy. But he looks at me and says, "Fuck you." And I said, "Whoa, what?" And so I said, "No, man, just, stop the stop signs and, we're good." And he says, "No, that's stupid." And I said, "Oh, okay." Well, what he really violated was contempt of cop. He wasn't respecting my authority. And so I put my overhead lights on, pulled him over, and got out. And I was still being a nice guy. I think there were times that I wasn't a nice guy. I was a bad guy. But generally, as a cop, I was a good guy. And I got out and I said, "Hey, man, I'm still not going to I don't plan to give you a ticket. But I just want you to say, okay, I'll slow down or I'll stop when I get to stop signs instead of slowing down." Because, by the way, as a cop, I was taught we want voluntary compliance with a law. And I didn't realize at the time that was an oxymoron. All I wanted him to do is say, "Oh, okay, I'll slow down." And then I could say to the nice older neighbor lady who was looking out the window and said, "There was a guy that ran a stop sign and the cop didn't do anything about it." Well, I get in trouble that way. So I'm just trying to not get in trouble. So I'm explaining this to him, and he says, "No, this is ridiculous. It's 1 a.m. I don't want to drive drunk. So I'm out on my bicycle. I'm not even drunk. I'm driving my bicycle home. It wasn't dangerous." And I'm like, "I agree it wasn't. Just need to stop at stop signs." "Fuck you." I said, "Oh, okay." So I pull out my ticket book and I said, "No, you are going to get a ticket now. This obviously it's not working, just giving you a warning. So I'm going to get the message through to you in another way." So I pull out my ticket book and I say, "What's your name?" And of course, I'm puffed up and, I'm a tough guy. And he says, "I don't remember." I said, "Come on, just give me your name. I can't write the ticket without it. I've already started. I put the date on it or whatever. I got to have your name." And he just, "No, I don't remember." "Well, do you have your driver's license with you?" "I don't think I have it with me." And he kept going on like this. And I said, "Come on, just let me do this." I called a supervisor. Supervisor came over, and supervisor was being nice to him, as nice as a cop could be, who is detaining a person without good cause, and said, "Hey, Shepard just needs your ID so he can give you a ticket. I'm not saying you're guilty. You just have to show up in court." And the guy said, "No." Well, he kept refusing to comply. He wouldn't bow. He wouldn't kowtow, any of the things that a good subject should do. And so I arrested him. And at the time, and up until just a few years ago, even deep into my years as a voluntarist, if I had heard that person say I was arrested for running a stop sign, I would say, "Well, no, that's not really true. I tried to give you a ticket for it. The reason you got arrested is because you wouldn't sign the ticket." But the truth is, I started the encounter. I'm the one that started talking to him. So in fact, everything that follows, if he had shoved me and then I'd shoved him and then he pulled a knife and then I shot him, people would have said the cop shot him because he ran a stop sign. Well, no, cop shot him because he pulled a knife and was threatening deadly force. Well, but who started the encounter? So kind of in the long run, yeah, I did get shot because of what followed from running a stop sign. And I didn't shoot the guy, but I did take a guy's freedom away for a night. And it still cost him, I'm sure, $60 or whatever a stop sign on a bicycle ticket is. Yeah, that was bad. Shame on me. I actually did a video on that, apologizing to him. I don't have his contact information, but I knew his attorney from a different or small town. So I did send a link to him and said, "Hey, will you give this to the guy and just let him know I'm sorry." So yeah, there were, yeah.
I have a lot of pent up rage and anger at the police as a tribe because of all of the things like what you're describing. And so I'm really trying not to just dump all of that anger on you, because you're the one probably cop in the world that it don't deserve it at this point.
I can take it. Bring it on. Get it out.
It's just so goddamn evil, man. It is so evil. Let's move on. Archangel for Truth asks a question. Why do cops fail to understand that we, the people, have the same 10th Amendment authority as states have, because cops are paid by the state to violate the people's freedom to exercise it? Not quite sure I understand that question. Go ahead.
Sir, I don't have time to talk about that right now. You were speeding. I need your driver's license. Mm-hmm. So that was the typical cop response. And then for the actual point of it, I would say that I'm a voluntarist. So I still fail to realize why any scribbles or amendments called scribbles or scribbles called amendments have anything to do with anybody. I do think that the philosophic idea is that one person doesn't have any more rights or authority over another than any other person. And I do completely agree with that. I would have never agreed with it as a cop, because it says, like, I'm a sworn cop. Like, the actual mayor was in the room when I got sworn in. Could you believe that? Like, I got to shake hands with the mayor, and there's state statutes say I have the authority. So yeah, I'm the real deal. I mean, that's the typical cop attitude. So yeah. So to answer that question very succinctly, which I have not thus far, because cops aren't thinkers. That's why they fail to realize.
Okay, well, that kind of leads into another question I have. So a lot of times when I'm having philosophical debates, people will bring up and I don't want to use this term, but it's the best way to tell people what I'm thinking of. It would be the sovereign citizen argument. So they start talking about strawman names and corporations, and I call it magic spells, because it is a system of I used to play Dungeons and Dragons. I love the game. There's a rule book with a spell list in it, and the spells have descriptions and requirements and regents, and you do a thing and a thing happens. I call laws magic spells because they're kind of the same thing. They are this book of, and they're magic because it's not real. So so it's a list of like incantations that are performed and ceremonies that are performed, and the people that believe in that magic system see the effects of those spells and think those spells are causing the effects. So they're seeing a connection that isn't there in reality. And so I also see people that talk to me about the sovereign citizen stuff, and if you need to stop using your straw man and, travel as a man on the land, or, whatever, that kind of stuff. I see that as them attempting to use the magic spells in that magic system against the grand wizards of that system. And it's like a spell battle. But the thing is, none of it's real. And the reality behind the magic system is that the wizards at the top are actually just pointing guns at everybody. And the spells are a distraction for the plebs down in the marketplace that make the plebs think that they're protected by these spells and that there's some kind of system in place that functions objectively, when in reality there's just a big gun pointed at everybody.
Yes. I agree with you about that completely.
What are a cop's thoughts when somebody maybe gets pulled over? Did you ever pull anybody over that said anything, any of the sovereign citizen shtick? And I don't mean to sound disparaging. I'm just, what do you think?
I'll be very respectful of the yellow fringe flag, capital letters people. Nothing but respect from me. I appreciate that they're doing what they feel is a good idea, but no, I actually have a pretty good friend who is into that and has spent time in jail. I went to court a year or two ago just to sit there and be his support as he did his thing. But as far as a cop is concerned, it's a joke. It's not like we're actually reading all of this stuff. It could be absolutely correct. I'll even say all of that is we'll go and say that it's all correct. Mm-hmm. That if you capitalize your name and you send a letter and you say, I don't want to be a citizen on this ship anymore, and you do everything, dot the I's and cross the T's. Okay, well, let's say that's true. It doesn't matter. What matters is the gangbanger that has a gun and is telling you right now to give a particular document, not the one that you made on your photocopy machine and had 3 friends that are Grand Knights sign with you.
To be clear, you mean the Blue Line gangbanger. That's what you're talking about.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. I'm sorry if I'm disparaging cops. I know you probably have a lot of respect for them.
Well, you might need to compete with the comments right now.
What we would have on the bulletin board at the police department, I recall somebody put up a 3-page letter that was saying that the guy wrote, claiming he had these rights and blah, blah, blah. It was a thing that we all looked at and laughed about. And indeed, we didn't pick on the guy, but it wasn't because we read and said, oh, you know what, he has a good point in subsection 32.643. No, we just didn't want the hassle. We didn't want the hassle because people who are into that are even more talkative than I am. You can't get them to stop. And you don't want to deal with it. And like, if the guy's just driving along and he's going to be a real hassle, why mess with him? So from that perspective, I would now say that even though I don't intellectually agree with that movement, if you can do anything, as Karl Hess would suggest, if you can do anything to have them not harm you as much, sounds like a good move. Mm-hmm. Sounds like a good thing to do. So if it's working for people, Mark Emery, like he actually pulls this stuff off beautifully. Like he's kind of the first person that's ever explained that point of view that I've gone, wow, you're actually a likable person. That could work. I still don't think it would, but cops don't care.
Yeah, just to be clear, I'm not like, if that stuff works and you're like you just said, if you're able to get out of tickets, or you have a system that you use to like get out of tickets in court, or you can say a series of words that makes a cop leave you alone when they pull you over, do it. do it.
Absolutely.
As hard as you want to do it. But don't try and tell me that the words are what is functioning, that the force of 18 USC 242, as ex-bootlicker says, telling people to unsub from the channel because I'm talking about this. Don't think that the power in 18 USC 242 has anything to do with whether or not you get off. Maybe you are tricking somebody. Maybe you are talking to somebody that believes in that magic spell, and so when you cast it at them, they tie their own hands without knowing it. Dude, if it works, do it hard. That's awesome.
Amen.
I'm not telling you not to.
Amen.
I'm just trying to wake people up to what is real and what is not. And unless you consent to that system binding you, then it doesn't rightfully bind you. And it's as long as you know that, and I think most of you do, then we're good. Do whatever you do to defend yourself.
And by the way, Patrick, you mentioned something about, I just got the impression that some of the comments are, there could be a few negative ones there, and I can't read them right now. But I just kind of like to put out there that I'm sometimes joking and I keep a straight face and I'm being sarcastic. And maybe if I'm coming across as, well, they should be bowing before the cops. Well, I'm saying that and I'm keeping a straight face, but I'm being very sarcastic when I say that. And I'm making fun of the bad guy that I once was and that many people currently are. So please keep the comments coming and the questions. I want to help, but I should probably smile and laugh more at many of my failed jokes.
Yeah. Let's see. Archangel for Truth, reach out if you would like to have the chat. We can definitely do that on the Disenthrall channel. I love debating people on whatever topics they're interested in. Reach out to me on Discord is probably the easiest way, and we can set that up. Let's see. Oh, Darren Bianco. This is a unrelated to cops question, which is probably a breath of fresh air at this point. Why do you add? Why do we add? I think I'm going to add a we because a lot of us do it. Why do we add Y to the word volunteerism? And my answer to that is because volunteerism to a lot of people means a person that volunteers at charity events. So like we have one of the world's largest group of volunteers here in Dallas, Fort Worth, and it's called Voluntarists of Dallas. But even then we get people showing up at our meetups asking like where we're talking about, you know, this shelter or that event or that food drive or whatever. And we're like, oh yeah, we're doing the Volunteer to End Government event. And they get taken off guard. So I think that is one reason. It's a differentiation. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, I think it's that. I think that if you really look at the nuance of the words, it does make more sense to say voluntarism. However, it doesn't roll off the tongue as well. One of the reasons that I do it is because my mentor, who died a week ago today, Carl Watner, he's kind of the OG for all of us. He started the modern contemporary voluntarist movement along with Wendy McElroy and a few other people. And he has the website, voluntarist.com. He always used the word voluntaryist and not volunteerist. And I do think they have different meanings. I have used it out of respect to him, and he kind of started it. And maybe I think there's a better name for this brand of car than Ford, but it's already called a Ford, so I'll keep calling it a Ford. So yeah, I don't know that it's perfect. And I would even say that it's going to be demonized and bastardized in time if it hasn't already. And I'm prepared to give it up and find a new word. Just like anarchism, I've quit using that to describe myself. There's so many silly, incorrect things that people think anarchism is. And I have too much joy in life to fight over a word. If you want that word, I'll make up another one, or just I'll get a series of letters and numbers and symbols. Like I'll get one of these good passwords. That's what we'll call the philosophy that I care about. It's not about the word. It's about not initiating violence against other people. It's about just being good.
Well, even that seems to be up for debate. It never ends, man. Language is such a mess. I call it a lossy thought compression algorithm because everybody has their own subjective ideas and feelings about what words mean. There was a debate on some channel recently between the comedian Dave Smith and some dude in the Libertarian Party about the non-aggression principle being violated when somebody is racist. Like, not taking actions or hurting anybody because of racism, just existing in a state of racism is a violation of the non-aggression principle. It's like people have, there are people, and you'll find a lot of them in the party, that have just no concept of the words that the supposedly party is founded on. We have a lot of work to do, and this is a good, now it sounds like I'm complaining, but it's a good thing that we have people coming in this close to us that we can talk to about these ideas. We need this. This is the low-hanging fruit that we need. But yeah, yes. I think we have to constantly we have to be comfortable in repeating ourselves and reminding, what's the word? There's a certain amount of fighting for language that's important. But also at a certain point, you just gotta kind of use whatever works best to communicate the principles you're trying to communicate. So there's two sides to that coin.
Yep. And thank you, by the way, speaking of language, thank you when you sent me the email for not saying Patrick, he, him, his. Thank you for not including those, your preferred pronouns. I appreciate that.
My pronouns are 2025 DeLorean, Great Scott, and 88 miles per hour. I identify.
Okay. Yeah. That's how you identify. Okay.
And now we're banned from YouTube. So, all right, guys, last call for questions. James Freeman's in the chat. Hey, James Freeman, I hear there's an update on your case. I have not yet caught up on it. Maybe we can talk about that sometime soon. We have an
big fan. Way to go, James. You are doing it, James.
Isn't that awesome? Isn't that awesome?
Yeah.
So for anybody in chat, guys, this is kind of a rare moment for you to ask. We have an ex-SWAT team sniper cop here that is now a voluntarist. So if you have any questions, get them into the chat now. Okay. Oh, we have one right now. Archangel for Truth. Second question: as a cop, you swore an oath to uphold the Constitution, but as a voluntarist, how can you enforce regulations that violate Ninth Amendment and unenumerated rights? He's no longer a cop. I think that's the important thing. He was a cop before he was a voluntarist. I guess
15 years ago is when I left. Yeah.
I think a good question would be, would it even be possible to be... Oh, hey, thank you. Thank you, wife. My wife is in the house bringing the coffee.
Oh, perfect. I love calling beer that. That's a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah, coffee.
I love the idea. I love what you're asking.
Would it even be possible to be a cop and a voluntarist at the same time, would be the question.
Absolutely not.
And
however, In my opinion, and I'm going to couch it in that because somebody could probably say, well, if you have premarital sex, how can you be a Christian? Like, doesn't it say it pretty clearly there? And then people who are theists could argue about that. So I want to make sure that I'm not saying that everything I think is correct. But my perspective, my understanding of a voluntarist is someone that everything is voluntary. And as a cop, what you're doing is initiating force against other people. And so therefore, you're not being voluntary. Secondly, the money that you're getting paid with to do your job, it is coming from taxation or worse yet, from the Federal Reserve. But it's not coming from people who say, you know, at night, I want to be able to go to sleep and I want a big, strong guy to stand out front and make sure nobody burglarizes the house. And I'm willing to pay for that. That's not how a cop is being paid. So I think that a cop would not be able to be a voluntarist for those two reasons. But I'm going to take it a step further and put myself down here. Is a person who pays taxes, can that person even call themselves a voluntarist? I pay taxes. Our accountant, our CPA, is a flaming lefty, as she would probably proudly brag about. And we purposefully have an accountant or a CPA of that type because we know there's less chance that we'll get in trouble. So we are paying money that is demanded of us, and it's not voluntary. I don't vote, but should I be paying taxes? Is the fact that I pay this thing they call taxes, does that take my card away so I'm no longer a card carrying member? I don't know. The reason I do pay what's demanded of me is because I'm scared. I'm scared that I'll have my property taken from me and be incarcerated. But just because you're scared, does that make it okay to do bad things?
So no, well, maybe we have a debate here because my position is that no one pays taxes. Taxes are extorted. It would be like saying
that's true.
You pay the thief that robs you in the dark alley that you own and have a right to walk down. Like, that's your alley. You can walk down it if you want. And if a robber, jumps out and robs you, you're not paying the robber. The robber is extorting you or, stealing.
That's a good
from
distinction.
You. And if he takes that. And if he takes that money and the stolen property that you did not consent to him having, and he goes and does bad things with it, you are absolutely in no way culpable for the bad things he does with that money. You had and a lot of people say, well, yeah, but you chose to walk down the alley and you knew there was a robber there that was probably going to rob you. Yes, but it was your alley. That is your property. You have a right to walk down that alley. To say that you had to not use your property to keep the robber from hurting you is to basically give de facto ownership of that alley to the thief hiding in it, which is an anti-property rights position. So that would be my counter argument for you. I don't know what you have to
Yeah, that's a good argument. Yeah, that's yeah. I love it when I am challenged on something. I love it when I'm wrong. Because that's how I've changed my mind so frequently. I love the old man. He was asked, would you die for your beliefs? And he says, hell no, I might be wrong. I love that attitude. Like, I think I have some really good values, and I think I have some really good principles that I base my life on. But maybe we should be punching 2-year-old little girls in the nose when we meet them. I don't think so. I've come to the conclusion that we shouldn't do that. But if you have a good argument, I would be more than happy. Put it succinctly, please. Give me a good argument. I'll listen with an open mind. And if your idea is better, that we should all punch little 2-year-old girls in the face, then I'll adopt the new idea. I think that I've weighed a lot of things over the last 12 years and have a pretty good idea of where I am, but I'm always open to learning new and better things and changing.
Now, I've listened to your terrestrial radio show, and you do that constantly. Over and over, you say, now, if you guys disagree, call in. Tell me why. I want to hear your arguments. I love that. That is everything that embodies like the rational intellectual approach to finding truth, is constantly looking for people that disagree with you so you can find out where you're wrong. That's awesome. I love that about you, and I love that about your show. We have a few questions here built up, and why don't we go ahead and we'll close questions. We had last call before. Now we'll call the questions closed, and we'll go through the ones that we have and then go ahead and wrap up. So we have two questions from Dingleberry Pie. Where are the good cops was his question. Now, I guess we can expand on that question a little bit. And his second question was, when do the cops turn on tyrannical government officials? So from this sort of idea that you've given us about cops, they're these robots that are just kind of doing their job in the way that they were trained to do it. I assume that none of that training involves arresting politicians that violate the Constitution.
Why would you do that?
Well, I'm always steel manning the evil guys on the show for the guests. So yesterday I was the stores banning masks and the airlines kicking children off of airplanes, and today I'll be well, this isn't a bad guy. This is fine. So, you swore an oath to the Constitution, not to the politicians. And so, when the politicians violate the Constitution, why don't these cops that read the Constitution and swore an oath to it? Why aren't they going after the politicians? Why aren't they refusing to enforce these laws ubiquitously?
I think that the belief in authority is the problem. And I believe in hierarchy. I believe that sometimes it's a good idea to have structure in organizations. And I have to admit that if you I don't know how many cops there are, 500,000 or whatever in the US, but if you had 500,000 people that have average IQs, you don't get to be a cop if you have a high IQ, which is very disappointing to me because I like to think that I have a high one, but I evidently don't, or I wouldn't have passed the psychological exam. But you have a bunch of people that are aggressive, assertive, and they are not incredibly bright, and they are told to follow orders. That's the job, is to follow orders. And it's not your job to ask all these questions. We have judges that handle that. We have politicians. We have those people decide how to understand the laws and the Constitution. Your job is simply to go out, find the person that does the thing. You're basically a historian. You write down what happened and make sure that that person can give good evidence that they're going to take care of it with the brains of the operation, which would be the attorneys and the judges. That's kind of the order of cops. So it never would dawn on me to arrest a supervisor or a person that's higher in the food chain than me. That's not my job. Those are the people that tell me what to do. And at that point, I really believed in that authority thing. The most dangerous superstition. I believed in that. And I thought that my sergeant had authority over me, and my chief, and then the local prosecuting attorney that was the next step up. And then the judge, what the judge said holds. If the politicians are doing something wrong, surely the next step up, the sergeant or lieutenant or chief, they would be the ones that would deal with that, not me. I'm just a lowly little patrolman or detective or, whatever assignment I'm on. It wouldn't be my issue. I think that would be the common thinking.
Yeah, and then Diggleberry Pie again follows up with a very astute question. The quality of your questions are much higher than your name, sir. He asks, then why take an oath? And I'll give my answer, and then maybe Shep can tell me if he disagrees. The oath is the magic spell. The oath is the veil that hides the gun of government from the populace. The people can't see that there's just an asshole gang member behind the glass with a gun, behind the curtain with a gun. The veil, the curtain itself, is things like the magic spells called laws, is things like the oath to the Constitution that the cops take. It not only convinces us, or it not only convinces the average citizen, but it convinces the cops themselves that they're supporting something that they're not. It is the curtain. That stuff, the magic system, is the curtain. What do you think, Shepard?
I absolutely agree. Because what if, when I was swearing the oath, and I think I recall in one of the places I swore it at a city council meeting, and I think I'd already been on the street for a couple days. What was the big difference all of a sudden, that magical moment that I said the magical words? Did that all of a sudden give me a moral right to do something different? Absolutely not. And what if, and this kind of goes to the yellow fringe flag, capital letters in the name movement perspective, what if when I was repeating the oath, I had said, I'd pronounced a word incorrectly, or I had misunderstood what it was. And I said, I swear. And I said, instead, I sworn. And I thought that it meant something else. Would therefore that change anything? Well, no, it would all still hold true, or not true. It would still all be there. I would still be giving tickets. I would still be arresting people. People would still think that I was a cop. And if you figured out 17 years later, oh, when he repeated the oath, he used a word incorrectly. Well, no, it's all just smoke and mirrors. It's the big show. It's the dress up in the big fancy marble halls that everybody is awed by, the distinguished gentleman from the state of, as Larkin makes fun of. Like, it's just all pomp and circumstance. It adds nothing. And I didn't really care. Here's why I swore to uphold the Constitution, because I had to. I also had to go to the bathroom and I had to wear a uniform. I couldn't leave the top button unbuttoned. I did it because I had to. It had zero intellectual meaning to me. I didn't care about a constitution. It's not like I understood it. I had to read something or repeat something.
It was like signing the employment paperwork to get a job. It was just part of that process.
Yep, I didn't read it all. I didn't know what all that stuff meant. It wasn't this serious holy thing that later, when I was a minarchist, I really believed in that stuff then. But yeah, I didn't. Not at the time.
Let's see. What last question that we're going to take is, what do you think about privatizing the police?
I think that it has already been done. I think that there are already private security business. The free market already has solutions for most real problems. Now, granted, they are very expensive at this point. And it's hard when you're having your money stolen from you. It's hard to still pool your money with your neighbors and hire a security guard. But I think in the real world, that's what is really happening anyway. As a cop, I didn't catch people stealing. I didn't catch them doing bad stuff. Somebody in the neighborhood, they were the ones that caught them, and then they would call the cops, and the cops, the historians, would show up and write down what had happened. But very rarely does the cop actually do what people think they're doing. People are doing it on their own. A few years ago, I had some money stolen out of my unlocked car in my driveway, and guess who caught him? The guy a couple streets over. They were trying to break into his car. He heard him. He went out and caught the guy, and therefore he was busted. It would be done privately. Now, I do admit, again, it's tough when we're having so much of our money stolen and we're not really allowed to compete. But I don't think there are that many problems anyway. And I know that I have a small town perspective, but even in big cities, I think there'd be a period of roughness if rough times, if the cops all disappeared and it gradually went to a privatized thing. And it takes a free market some time to catch up to stuff. Golly, I know that because of the price of ammo, but it takes a little while for the free market to work, but it does work. I would completely trust a private solution to that, but it would no longer be police. It would be security.
That's a great segue into the last thing I wanted to talk with you about, which is capitalism. And before I do, I want to shout out Dingleberry Pie for his $20 super chat. Not only did you remember to not use the Google super chat function so that you didn't pay Google anything, but you also supported the channel. So I appreciate you, sir. Thank you. He says, thanks for taking my questions. His name is a metaphor for our current society in America. One big shit pile.
I love it.
Somebody over on Float, Rage over on Float says, never mess with somebody named Dingleberry Pie.
Amen, brother.
That's hilarious. All right, so I think a good way to close this out is something that you've been working towards, and that is to sort of help put the capitalism in anarcho-capitalism. And I think my producer Kaysen definitely feels this way to a significant degree, that if for some reason a lot of ANCAPs, a lot of voluntarists, they got the anarchy part down, but they maybe need some assistance in the capitalism part, in the business, and the being successful and managing assets. And do you have any thoughts on that?
Absolutely. And I put them in a book entitled Harsh Advice for the Unemployed Guy. And maybe you'll put up an affiliate link on your site at some point so you can make tons of money on this. And by the way, for those of you that don't know about affiliate links, if you buy a book for $10, Patrick gets a few cents and it costs you no extra, and it's good for everybody. So use those. That I put a lot of advice in that, and I snuck in some voluntarist things as well. But I really believe that the free market can solve almost everything. Capitalism can solve almost every issue. I was mentored by some wonderful people. My wife and I would go out to their mansion and sit there at their breakfast nook, and they would give us all of this gold, and we'd go every week and absorb this and go back and study. Well, now I'm fortunate enough, 15 years later, that now I can be a mentor for others and help people along their journey. My wife is into this also. We're not giving back, because the people who helped us, only if we gave to them would we be giving back. But we love the idea of helping others in the area. When there's something that we discover through the school of hard knocks, we like to help others with it. So I would say anybody out there that's thinking of starting a business, please run your ideas by me. I'll be your little Shark Tank kind of thing. My wife and I love it, and we'll tear your idea apart. We'll encourage you to still do it and fail, because that's how you learn. But please let us help you flesh it all out. And we're always looking for good opportunities to grow our capital. And
what was the name of the book again? I'll grab a link right now. Harsh
Advice for the Unemployed Guy. And I'm going to talk. And can I do one more plug here?
Yeah, plug away, man.
Okay. My wife just yesterday was released on TEDx. She did a talk. Our daughter died about 2.5 years ago of lung cancer, and my wife did a talk. She's now helping people kind of prepare for end of life stuff. So if you look up on TEDx, look up the first name Lynn and Happier Endings. Look that up and check out her stuff. If you ever know anybody, and you will at some point in your life, who gets lung cancer, she wrote a book on it, Lung Cancer 101. She gives it away for free, the ebook. So if you ever know anybody that has this happen, please be in touch. She wants to help. So thanks for letting me plug that.
I'm sorry about your daughter, man.
Yeah, thanks.
My situation is a little fresh for me to have words on that for you right now. So I apologize.
You feel it. You feel me. You know it. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So, TEDx talk. That's really cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I dropped an Amazon affiliate link in chat, and I'll also put it in the description after the show for the people watching this after the live stream is over, to Shepard's book. Looks like Lynn has put in the title of the TEDx talk, which is awesome there as well. Okay, sir. Well, man, this has been a real pleasure. Like, every single time I talk to you, like I said in the beginning, I come away feeling like wiser and happier and motivated for life. Is there anything else that you would like to tell people or to close with?
Yeah, not that much. I would like to say support the people that are doing what you like in the world. And I'm saying this specifically for Patrick. And he didn't ask me to plug him or anything. You're already listening, so you love him. But he's putting out a really high quality show. Every so often he screws up and has a guest on like me, but otherwise he's really doing a good job. So is Kaysen. They are doing, not the Lord's work, but they're doing the good stuff. Please support content producers like them. I'm not even saying, financially would be great also, but spread the word to people. Help pump up everything that's happening in the movement. If we all just sit back and don't help each other move forward, we're just not going to get as far. So please support it might not be me, support the people that are doing the work that you like, help them keep their message going.
And I know that there's at least going to be 1,000 people that watch this and get to this point of the video. And for you 1,000, please drop by Shepard's YouTube channel and give him a subscription. All you're going to get is a bunch of really cool short clips that you can share with the normies, and it'll be really useful to you. And so make sure you support him as well. It's important that we all share each other's work. We were talking about this before the show, right? Like, I have studied deeply. I have drank deeply from the well of anarchist philosophy, and so a lot of times I don't watch as much other creators' content as I used to, because they're kind of saying the same things in different ways. But I think it's also important that when we do find the good stuff and the gems, that we do share it and help get them out there, because there's so many differently shaped minds, and the way I say things is going to bounce right off some brains, but the way Shep says, sorry, I called you Shep. I don't know if you like being called Shep.
Fine.
I hate being called Pat. So, and I just did it to you. I apologize, man.
No, don't worry.
Yeah, reciprocity, right? So the way Shepard says things, might go right into those brains that need to hear it. So, share the different flavors, appreciate the different flavors of anarchists. That's one of the things that we can learn. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Shepard, thanks again for being on the show. I hope to do this again. I had a great time.
Thank you.
Guys.
You're awesome.
Peace, love, and anarchy.